Today's first story is by that guy SWSCYGY. Entitled Mom Demands I Give Her My Driveway. This just happened. I was having a great morning with my wife and kids when my neighbor texted me. We have never spoken in the 6 to 7 years that we have lived here, and she has always given me and my family dirty looks. This never bothered me, but it always bothered my wife. We never knew why she did this, but today we found out. Side note, her husband seems like a decent guy who just acts like he is defeated by his wife. The few times that I have spoken to him, the conversation has always gotten cut short because his wife needed him for something. My house has a very long driveway. The driveway leads up a hill to my house at the top. The bottom quarter of the driveway is shared by my two neighbors. They have to drive up it to get into their garages. My side yard overlooks one neighbor's backyard while my backyard overlooks the other's backyard. My pool is in my backyard. Basically, she wants me to give her my driveway so she can build an in-ground pool for her kids. Her kids are a nightmare and she has never controlled them. She just lets them run around and do whatever they want all day. I still don't fully understand why she needs the rights to my driveway to do that, but she did not like being told no. If I'm being honest, I did get angry and a little immature during the conversation, but I felt it was warranted for the situation. She thought that threatening and making racist comments about my kids would be the best way to get me to do what she wants. My kids are half Korean, half European. Update 1. Thanks so much for the awards, guys. So I went out with my family earlier today. When we got home, she had blocked off our driveway with traffic cones. I moved them over to block her garage and texted her to let her know. Here's the conversation. I told my other neighbor about what happened and he said that he heard about her sneaking around on her husband. I was angry, got a little petty and brought it up. I'm still waiting for a response. Update 2. So she never responded to my last text, but she called me a few times today. I was at work so I didn't answer. She left me such a lovely voicemail, lol. I had to trim it, but my name is still in there and I don't feel like retrimming and re-uploading. It's been a long day. She says that she is going to build her pool with or without my signature and that I should sign LMAO. In the end she says to do the right thing, and calls me a bitch, but I wasn't sure how appropriate that is for SoundCloud, so I edited it out. You guys all have some great advice about how to handle this situation, but I haven't decided what to do yet. I don't want to escalate too much because my family has to live right near her. I also feel like I can't do anything because it will only get worse. I will let you guys know once I decide how to handle this. Update 3. A lot of people have been asking me for an update, and I don't think it's realistic to answer all of your messages individually, so here goes. I honestly didn't take my neighbor seriously, and that was a mistake. I stayed home from work on March 1st to make sure that my neighbor didn't try anything. The day was completely normal, so I went to work the next day. When I was pulling down my driveway, there were trucks from a pool company on the street in front of her house. I immediately regretted not taking this situation seriously, but I had to go to work, so I left and called my wife asking her to keep an eye out. About 2 hours later, my wife called telling me that the trucks had pulled onto our driveway and a few guys had started removing the hedges that line my driveway. To give you guys an idea of what my driveway looks like, there are hedges that line the driveway all the way up to my house, which then branch out to the right and left, although they aren't the only thing separating my property from my neighbors. In my previous post, I mentioned that my house is on a hill. My neighbors' houses are lower than mine, so their backyards are lower than mine. If you were to stand on my driveway looking at my neighbor's backyard, you would be looking at a 4 to 5 foot drop. The guys were removing the hedges for easier access to my neighbor's backyard. I immediately left work and headed home. When I got there, I explained to the contractors that I had not given permission to alter my property in any way. They told me to call their office, which I did. Unfortunately, my neighbor came outside while I was on the phone with them, screaming at the guys to continue what they were doing, telling them that she owned my driveway. She started screaming in my face, telling me that I was a scumbag, that her kids needed an in-ground pool. Why should my kids have a nice pool and not her kids? Nothing she said made any real sense. I didn't really know what to say, so I just kind of stared at her while she was screaming at me. I was still on hold with the pool company anyway. She then told me that my wife's sister had told her that it was okay for her to cut down my hedges, and that was all the permission she needed. My wife is one of 5 siblings, 3 girls and 2 boys. I am really close with her brothers, but not with her sisters. They've always been weird to me. The oldest sister straight up called me a fucking gook once a few years back. We were in a pretty heated argument, and the younger sister was never openly hostile towards me, but has been mooching off of me for the last 10 years and flips out on my wife if we ever say no to her. I really didn't know what to say to my neighbor at this point, so I just walked up to my house to speak to my wife. After my wife spoke to her sisters, we found out that my SAL, younger, has been speaking to my neighbor for the last year. She claims that she mentioned to her how the city had used eminent domain to take some of my property a few years back, but nothing more than that. I guess my neighbor thought this meant that anyone could take my property? Still not following the logic here. So yeah, this situation is completely bonkers. I'm putting a fence around my property now, which I really don't want to do. The pool guys assured me that they wouldn't be returning, but my neighbor is absolutely crazy and I'm wondering what she has planned next. My wife and I were talking about moving across the country to get away from her sisters, but we didn't want to leave my mom and brother. My kids love them. I guess my neighbor made our minds up for us, so we will be moving away ASAP. If anything else happens, I'll keep you guys updated when I find some time. The general consensus seems to be that I should speak to a lawyer and the police. I'm taking the day off to speak to a lawyer tomorrow. Also, a lot of comments about what is going to happen when I sell the house. I'm going to speak to my wife about it when I get home tonight, but I don't think I'm gonna sell the house. Hopefully I can put this house up for rent. I met with a lawyer this morning. She spoke a lot, but it doesn't seem like she can do much. I did call the police though. When I got home earlier today, the glass on my front door was cracked and one of my basement windows was shattered. I checked my cameras and my neighbor was knocking on my door for a few minutes before kicking my front door repeatedly. After she cracked the glass, she walked around to the back of my house and kicked in my basement window before running away. I called the police and they were here in less than 5 minutes. I gave them the footage and they went to knock on her door. I was told that I would be able to get a restraining order. I'll post an update when I find out what is going to happen to her. We're still going to move, but we are most likely going to sell the house. My wife just wants to forget this place exists and I don't disagree. Someone tagged my posts as fake, not sure why. I made my first post because I wasn't taking my neighbor seriously and I was kind of amused by the situation. I posted this one because a lot of you guys have been asking me for an update. I don't really want to post a picture of my driveway or house on a public site like this, so I guess believe what you want. Before we move to the second story, please like and subscribe. Our second story was posted by After 4. My family wants to reconnect after 6 years. So this is a long story and English is not my first language, please bear it with me. These are all fake names. I 45 male was married to my high school sweetheart Sarah 45 female. We had 4 daughters, Jane 24 female, Tori 22 female, Brianna 21 female and Claire 18 female. I met Sarah when we were 14 and we started dating right away. My parents loved Sarah and she became like the daughter they never had. I remember my father sitting me down and giving me advice: have good communication with another, think before you make any decision, that type of stuff. Me and Sarah were dating for 7 years at the time. When we found out she was pregnant with Jane, we were both over the moon, got married soon after and went on to have our beautiful family. The only problem was my brother Jack 43 male. Jack always had a crush on Sarah. It kind of harmed my relationship with him, but I tried to let it go because he was my brother and because Sarah also knew and had reassured me that she didn't have feelings for him. My limit was when Jack found out about mine and Sarah's engagement. He confessed his love for her and tried to convince her to leave me. She didn't and told me. At this point I was mad at Jack and I was ready to kick his ass had Sarah asked me not to. I was ready to cut my brother out of my life. It took Sarah and my parents, 68 male and 66 female, to convince me not to. My marriage with Sarah was amazing. We had, like any other couple, our ups and our downs, but I wouldn't change anything about it. We were a passionate couple who loved each other and their children more than anything. Mine and my brother's relationship improved after the incident and I truly believed he had gotten over his crush on Sarah. Little did I know that he didn't only still had a crush on Sarah but also was planning to break us up. One day, more than 6 years ago, I had arrived home after a week away due to job reasons and found my daughters, my wife and my brother in the living room. Sarah and my daughters were crying and when they saw me they started to scream at me. Sarah asked, "How could you have done this to me?" When I asked what she meant she said, "Cheating." I was surprised she accused me of cheating. Never in 25 years we had been together I cheated on her. I asked what made her believe I cheated on her. She showed me some pictures and texts that proved I had cheated on her with a colleague. I asked where she got this proof and my brother jumped in saying that this coworker, who also was friends with him, had confessed to him and sent him the proof. I started crying and begged Sarah to believe me. I told her that this was Jack's doing. She slapped me in the face and kicked me out. Before I left, Jane and Tori called me all kind of names. The one who pained me the most was, "You are a disgrace to our family." For a long time I tried to make Sarah and the girls see reason and to make them understand that I would never cheat, but sadly it was all in vain. My parents disowned me and my dad said if I was a man I would make the divorce easy. Before the end of the year me and Sarah were already divorced and my daughters didn't want to see me. In the beginning of 2017, Sarah and Jack got married. My daughters sent me a message saying that they hated me and didn't want anything to do with me and that they had a new father figure in their lives. It was hard, but with a lot of therapy I learned to move on. I always held on hope my family would find the truth, but I learned to live with the possibility they never would. 5 years went by without any contact with anyone from my family until a few days ago. I received a call from an unknown number. When I picked up I said, "Hello? Who's this?" And I heard sobs from the other side. It was my mom. She said they were sorry and wanted to meet me. I asked why and my mom said my family had found the truth about everything but this was a matter to be discussed personally. I told my mom that when or if I felt ready to meet them I would call her, but I didn't want to be contacted by no one until or unless I said something back. She told she understood and that she missed me. We said our goodbyes, but to be honest I still don't know what I should do. Update 1. My mom was the bridge of communication between me and my daughters. I messaged her that I wanted to meet my daughters in a public place and she recommended a park and we met yesterday. When I got there, my daughters had already arrived. I only had a few seconds to process seeing them for the first time in more than half a decade because Jane, my 24-year-old, jumped on me. She was crying and kept saying she was sorry and asked me to don't hate them. We stayed hugged for a few minutes. It seemed like she didn't want to let me go. It took Claire, my 18-year-old, to take Jane off me. Tori, my 22-year-old, asked me how I was. I looked at her for a few seconds. I was still surprised to see how much she had grown in the last years, but I also kind of saw the last 6 years flashing through my eyes. For a while after the divorce, I used to look of pictures of me, Sarah and the girls together and remembering the good old days and started wondering if living was still worth it. After a few seconds, I told Tori I had gotten a cat. I said that he was a great cat and my best friend and if it wasn't for him I wouldn't be here speaking to her. As soon as I said this, all my daughters started crying. I was looking at them, crying in the inside but somehow still able to maintain my poster. They all said they were sorry for not believing me and begged me to forgive them. I told them I still loved them more than anything, but it would take time for me to truly forgive them and that they would have to show me by their actions and not their words how sorry they were. I noticed Jane was wearing a ring. I asked her about it. She told me she had gotten married to her long-time boyfriend 2 years ago. At this point I was about to burst in tears knowing I had missed my daughter's wedding. I just asked if he walked down the aisle and she quietly said yes. I just couldn't do it anymore and started crying my heart out. I had to sit down. That a-hole stole everything I held dear and robbed me of one of the moments I was longing the most for, walking my daughter down the aisle. I was ugly crying and I could tell Jane was sad as well. I told her that I would get over it and not to worry about it. She just hugged me again silently. We stayed like that for what it seemed a long time. After we broke off the hug, Jane said she was sorry once again. I told my daughters that I needed a few days but I would like to go on family therapy with them. They agreed. Me and my daughters were catching up about each other's lives and it felt good to have a normal conversation with them. They gave me their phone number, we said our goodbyes and I hugged every single one of them tightly for a long time. Update 2. I would like to start by thanking everyone for their support. A user has been messaging me and his input on my situation has been very helpful. I explained to him that Jack was always praised by our parents due to his grades and was somewhat always competitive. This user believed that my brother could be a narcissist and saw Sarah and my daughters as trophies. Me and my daughters attended therapy last Saturday. I got in first and explained to the therapist my concerns about Jack being a narcissist. She told me my concerns could be right but it was not certain. My therapy session was a bit emotional but good. I started by explaining how I felt during all this time, how many nights I cried missing Sarah and the girls. How I had nightmares and how hard it was all for me. My daughters did talk but it was not easy to understand their words. They were crying the whole time and it got worse as time went by to the point I had to calm them down and reassure I was not mad at them. The session ended and we will attend our second session next Friday. Although I still don't know what will happen, I am hopefully I can rebuild my relationship with my girls. Also, I had dinner with my daughters on Tuesday. It went good and they had the chance to meet my cat and they brought copy of pictures of us. It was a nice gift. Our last story is by Thro Rafanali. My parents chose their new families over me so I moved in with my aunt. Now they want back in. But I hate them. Hi. So I 16. Moved in with my aunt at 15 because my parents remarried and had new families. My father married his mistress who already had a son and now they have a baby daughter. My mom remarried my stepdad and they had my half-sister. After all that I became a secondary character in their life and they looked forward to ship me off to the other home so they could pretend that I didn't exist and play happy family. After a year I became fed up and started sleeping over more and more at other houses, and when home I would never interact with anyone. Both my parents took that as a rebellious phase and would fight with me all the time. I wasn't a bad kid or a troublemaker but soon I was labeled as the black sheep of the family. Every interaction with my parents became a lecture about my attitude problem and how well the other kids behaved. I was just so fed up that I packed shit and disappeared for a few days. I took a bus and went MIA for 4 days. Of course the police was called and when I appeared again I hit another lecture. We got in a screaming match where they called me a disappointment and I told them I hated them. I called my aunt crying and she came to fetch me. In the car I could hear how she was tearing my parents a new one. Neither of them tried to convince me of coming back home. We informed the respective authorities about my changed living condition and my aunt is my current guardian. My parents' ways half-assed our contact. Appearing only when it was convenient, sometimes giving me money, etc. Recently they tried to build more contact up but I was not interested. I won a story writing contest and didn't tell them, nor did I invite them to the celebration. And on the website where you can read my story the thanks goes to my aunt for loving me unconditionally. I didn't invite my parents to my sweet 16 party. Basically I have cut them out of my life. I am not interested in their lives or families or anything. Mom tried to meet up for my birthday but we didn't. She got upset and called me crying and I just didn't care. It was like listening to a TV character cry. It wasn't important. She isn't important to me anymore. Dad called me and said he was worried about me and how my reaction is not healthy, and again I didn't care. As far as I am concerned, my aunt is my only parent. She encourages that I build up my relationship to my parents again but doesn't force me. Anyway, yesterday my parents pulled me out of school and invited me to eat at our old favorite place. Mom had tears in her eyes and even Dad seemed hurt. They tried apologizing for their behavior and pleaded with me to come back, and I just said no and left. I still resent them for choosing a new life over me. But I don't know if I am being a pretty asshole or what to do now. I don't want them in my life, but would I be making the right choice? I don't know. Edit, because people think oh just made it up and I am a moody teen. You know when you are at a friend's house where their parents don't particularly like you and you feel tense all the time and you feel like you shouldn't be there? That was the feeling I constantly had at their houses. I know that my stepfather doesn't like me that much. My parents would both fight about who keeps me longer. But not in the sense, I want to have her longer, but, I took her last weekend. It's your turn. Also planning fun activities for the day after I leave. My father and his wife would often schedule visits to the parks or bigger trips specifically to the weeks my mother had me, and my mother and her husband would leave me alone at home so they could go out with the baby. Every chance they got they would ship me off to grandma's or my aunt's place with some excuse and then do family stuff. Also, when you went through the houses there were barely any pictures of me. They had big-ass portraits of my siblings and them together but almost none of mine. They shipped me off to my grandma's and grandpa's for a whole summer and only called twice. When there are family functions I am often excludes. Example, my dad had a family barbecue and didn't invite me. They forgot my birthday on more than one occasion, and when they remembered they got me a $10 Starbucks gift card even when they know I don't like Starbucks. So no, they never straight up said it, but they didn't hide it either. Update: my parents chose their new families over me. They want back in but I hate them. It's been about 2 months since the post about my parents. Turns out they are still selfish assholes. They didn't want me in their lives because they suddenly felt remorse and guilt, but because my half-sister has health complications and needs a transplant, and apparently, I am not sure about this, I am the only match, which is wild because I have not been tested. Can they just see that from my medical records? I'll visit my half-sister more and try to build a relationship with her, but I am done with my parents. My aunt has also given up on my parents and we are currently looking into legal adoption. Thanks regardless. Thank you guys for listening our stories. Don't forget to like and subscribe.